Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Studio Live today and this special presentation of what is the future of GarageBand iOS. My name is Pete and this is Studio Live today, where my goal is to help you, yes you, create, record and release your best music. And if, like me, you like creating on the go, you like creating using a mobile platform that is simple but still powerful, then GarageBand iOS is something that you may be interested in, or more likely, you're already using GarageBand iOS to create at least some of your music, because that's probably why you are here. So in this one, we're going to talk about a few things about GarageBand. We're going to discuss the future of GarageBand, and I want your feedback and your opinions as we go along. So what are we covering in this video? We're going to talk about the current state of GarageBand on the iPad and the iPhone. We'll chat a little bit about some alternative DAWs. We're then going to dive into the main section, which is what is the future? What features do we want? What would make GarageBand the go-to platform for everyone? And then I'll give you my conclusions, some final closing thoughts, my crystal ball about the future of GarageBand and where we're going with this wacky, crazy world of mobile creating. So we'll jump into the current state in just a moment. But first of all, hello to the folks who are here live. If you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, please say hello. Let me know where you're dialing in from. Grab yourself a beverage. I'm rocking the coffee today because it is the morning here. It is 6:30 a.m. in sunny Adelaide, South Australia, although it is winter time. We've got a bunch of folks who are here live as well who are saying g'days. Folks like Desolate Morning, the person I least expected. What are you doing here? I didn't expect you. We've got 1,000 watts who's here saying g'day. Alex Backus has already started the party right. He's put a live super sticker here. If you do want to donate to the channel, feel free to. Super chat and super stickers are available here. Jade Star is here on the stream. Who else have we got tuning in? Benedict Stewart is here. We've got Tom Rochelle. We've got Scott here. Langston Reese is here as well. Finley Wright. Gaskell. Hello, what is up with you, my friend? We've got Crime Scene Louie. GarageBand is for preschoolers. Well, we're going to talk about that, aren't we? My preschoolers never did that well with GarageBand. Although it is pretty good. If you use the live loops, it goes well. Hello to SM Borthwick. We've got Little Cloud, James Orrell, and Jeffrey Calloway joining us from Sacramento. Hope everyone is well. Hope everyone is safe, and hope everyone is ready for the next probably close to at least 30 minutes, if not an hour. You know what it's like around here. We do like to talk, and especially when we're talking GarageBand. Hello to Trey, and hello to Sakar. If you do join us as we continue on here, we'll circle back and say g'day as we go, as we like to say. So let's dive in and talk about a couple of things. The current state of GarageBand iOS. So as you're probably aware, GarageBand iOS is something that's available on your iPad, as you can see here. This is what it looks like. It's also available on your iPhone. The versions are very, very similar. We are currently at version 2.3.8. We started off with GarageBand version 1 way back in 2011 for the iPad. I should have checked my facts. This isn't a history of GarageBand, but it started on the iPad. It was very quickly ported to the iPhone and the iPod Touch, but it was really version 2, and more importantly, version 2.1, where it really stepped it up a notch, where we got cool things like automation that we can do here on GarageBand. So we can use volume automation. In version 2.2, we added things like the Alchemy synth sound so that you can start creating really cool and unique keyboard sounds here by using some of your Alchemy synths. So I'll turn my volume up. So you can start doing some impressive things with synth sounds. And then over the time, we've just added more and more features. We now have to the point where we've got 24-bit audio. So, you know, there's not 24-bit, 44.1 kilohertz audio coming out of GarageBand. So what I say when folks say, why would you use GarageBand? Why don't you use a real DAW? Well, GarageBand actually has kind of everything, but it does have some limitations. And don't worry, we'll be getting to those and talking about those in one of the next sections where we get into that. But there really is a lot that you can do here. And the beautiful part about GarageBand is it combines its two worlds colliding. So it combines all of these really cool virtual touch instruments that you can just jump into and start playing. So you can just grab all of those. You've got a bunch of different sounds in the sound library. You can play in your keyboard instruments, but you can also connect up your own stuff. So you can actually record. So you can add things like vocals here, directly recorded vocals to complement all of your virtual instruments. Plus you can plug your guitars in, your own external synthesizers. I know I'm selling ice to the Eskimos here, aren't I? But it's important to say that because there's an awful lot that GarageBand can do. Before we go in and focus on what it can't do, wanted to focus on what it can do. So what else have we got here in my notes here? So older devices can still run GarageBand. So you can still run it on your old iPad. I still have it on my iPad 4, the old version 2.1 that I have on there. So it can run on iOS 9 and 10 if you've already got it on those. Now, what is going to happen in the future? Well, that's what we'll talk about later on. But to give you a bit of a preview, Apple have announced their silicon chips coming to Macs, which will make them be able to run iPhone and iPad apps. They demonstrated this in the recent WWDC. So that's an interesting development because for a while now, people have been saying, well, Logic, the big brother, big sister of GarageBand, may come to iOS. But it's actually kind of a bit of a flip side of that in the coming sort of year, we'll have Macs that are running a silicon chip that is very, very similar to the A12 chip running on your iPhone or your iPad, and they'll actually be able to run your iPhone and iPad apps. So will it be the other way around? Will we see GarageBand iOS become the future of GarageBand? And what does that mean for GarageBand Mac? It's interesting times. I would love to hear your views on this. If you're here live, let me know. If you're here on the replay, drop a comment and let me know what you think. Because at the moment, what we have is we have your GarageBand on a Mac, which has been around since 2004. We did a history of that just recently, where we showed the very first launch of GarageBand on Mac. We've got GarageBand on iPad and iPhone, and they've both been kind of going along separately, but sort of together for a while, and they're quite different in what they do. Logic then is the sort of the next step up for Mac. But for iOS, there's no logical, pun intended, step up from GarageBand iOS in the Apple universe. So that's why folks are saying, well, Logic Pro X, Logic should be coming to iOS because it would give GarageBand producers that next level. So I still think it will, but here's what I think. I think we'll eventually have one version of GarageBand and one version of Logic that will run on everything. It makes absolute sense that that Apple would do that. They would have your entry level to get you started for free, because GarageBand is free on Mac and iOS, and then we'll go into the next level where you would pay. Now, hopefully, you pay an upfront cost. You know my feeling on subscription services. I'm hoping that we don't go down the subscription route for this. So that's where we are at the moment. That's our current state of GarageBand. What do you think about it? What are your thoughts? And I hope you can tune in and let me know. We will get to some more comments from the folks here. But hello to we've got Stu here. We've got Patrick from GarageBand Guide. Oh, I should probably press the button. Hello to Stu Cash. Hello to Battalion. We've got you here. Hello to Patrick over at the GarageBand Guide. I'm glad to see you here as well. I think I've said g'day. Solrack M7 is here as well. Good to have you here. We've got Trey Agnew. Yes, I think I've said g'day to everyone else who has been tuning in here. Tono is here. Is there a free version of Logic? There's a free trial. So if you're on the Mac, you can get a free trial to Logic. So it's not a free version per se, but there is a free trial as well. Hello to you, Missy. I'm glad to see you here on the stream. And Jeffrey Phillips is here as well. Glad to have everyone here on board. Let's continue on, shall we? Because our next section that we have here is what is GarageBand lacking? Now, I asked this question over on the GarageBand users. Where did we say? Features we want to see. I asked this question over on the GarageBand users Facebook group, and there's something about asking people that are passionate about a platform what they want to see changed that really gets people passionate and drives their desires and their comments. So we've got a heap of comments on here, and we're going to go through some of them now. I'm just going to bring them up here on my phone to make sure that I don't miss any. That's me. I brought myself up going live, so I'm going to bring those up. But I do have some notes here. I'm going to go through my personal views of what I think we should see, and then we'll jump into some of the other folks. And of course, if you're here live and you have your own views, put those in the chat now, and then I'll try to get to some of those as we go through this. But we've got a bit of a laundry list of features that we want to see in the future. Going to go kind of in order of what I really want to see. So number one thing that I really want to see is a master track. So if you use GarageBand, you would know that we have all of the tracks here. We kind of have this little thing up here, but it's not really a master track. Yeah, that's just sort of a master fader that is just our overall volume. So a master track means that you can control the overall volume of all of your different tracks, everything that you have here, then you can actually control in one track, which is your overall master volume. It also means you can put things like EQ, and you can put plugins and effects on the master track. It's a pretty simple thing. It is in GarageBand on a Mac, and it is in Logic. We would love to see it. And based on the feedback I've had from other folks, a lot of you want to see it too, because it's one of the things that comes up a lot. The other one is the time display. Check this out. We only have bars here in GarageBand. We don't have the ability to actually display the time, which is really weird. You would think that we would be able to actually go in here and say, I want this to be seconds or minutes and seconds, so that I can actually, when I'm recording, say, oh, my chorus at 1 minute 32 is doing this. Every other DAW in the world has it. For whatever reason, GarageBand simply does not. Automation, I mentioned it earlier on. Automation is super cool. Obviously, we can control the volume automation here by turning this on and changing our points around. That's really handy, but you can't control anything else with automation. No effects, no panning. There's ways around it. You can create a second track and automate that to do a bit of a hack and a workaround, but we don't have that. As I said up the front here, all of these are limitations, and they're all fine. Like, I still use GarageBand and I still enjoy it. So I'm not here to say all of these should be fixed tomorrow, but it is fun to just kind of go through this and work out what sort of things would I change if I could. If I had the magic crystal ball, or if I was the head of Apple software development, what would I actually do? And it would be these things. Next up is sends and receives and buses. So these are things that we don't have here as well. And if you've used other DAWs, these can be handy. You can set up a reverb and a delay, and then you can just send a bunch of tracks at different levels. So say I wanted a little bit of reverb on my drums here, a bunch of reverb on my vocals. Here in GarageBand, I have to go in and I have to come and do that for every individual track. I have to manually set all of my reverb, all of my delay for every track. Would be handy to have a master effect. Now, you kind of do. You got these ones here. You got your master echo and your master reverb. So I realized that I'm blocking off with that. I'll take that off there. You've got your master echo and your master reverb, but they're very basic, and you can only use those two. What if you want a flanger? What if you want a master flanger or a send to a flanger? You don't have anything like that. So that's definitely something that would be cool to have. And again, we have in a lot of others. One thing that's pretty simple, but I thought we'd be able to have by now, is mono tracks. So every track in GarageBand is actually a stereo track. And this creates some weird kind of problems when you really just want something 100% mono to put on the left or the right or the center. It's not really there. And what you tend to find is you're like, oh, I want this here. And then you go and you add a plugin or an EQ, and it turns, a plugin or an effect, and it turns out it's a stereo effect. And then suddenly your mix is bouncing around on the other side and you don't know why. So being able to control the tracks, like again, a lot of other DAWs, you can say this is a stereo track or this is a mono track. Even though this only has one waveform and it looks like a mono track, it's actually a stereo track. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt. Let's talk about the guitar, shall we? Because a lot of folks put this as their number one thing. They're like, the guitar sound. Now, as I mentioned at the start, you can plug in a guitar. You can use a guitar by just plugging it on in. But if you don't play guitar, and if you want to use a guitar sound, what is it about guitars that we haven't been able to improve on? So since version 2 of GarageBand, there's been no change to the guitar, basically. We've had a couple of added one. I think we got the Roots Rock and the Retro Wah. So we've got 5 guitar sounds now. But as much as I'd love to say that this guitar is really fun, I don't have my volume up. That's just not an awesome guitar sound. It's it kind of sounds like a MIDI guitar from the 90s, which is okay if that's the vibe you're going for, and it's still usable. But by golly, by jingo, by crikey, we should get ourselves some better guitars sounds in here. And I'll touch on what a bunch of other folks said as well. So I know that over on the GarageBand Users Facebook group, a lot of folks were talking about mandolin, about ukulele, about banjo, about some other cool stringed instruments that we don't have in here. So we got a bunch of instruments, but again, I think GarageBand's been pretty heavily focused in recent times, at least, on electronic production, on loops, on synth sounds, which is cool. But yeah, we'd like some more instrument sounds, please. What else have we got here? We can't name our sections. So that's another thing that we don't have the ability to do here. So you can name a bunch of stuff. You can name your tracks over here. You can name your audio files. You can't name your sections, which is a pain in the butt. Because if you're coming in here and we're adding in extra sections, it's always just going to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And that doesn't make it really easy when you're trying to do your arranging, because it would be great if you could just have, intro, verse, chorus, bridge. That sort of stuff would be super handy. Unfortunately, we don't have that available in GarageBand, and that should be something that's pretty easy to fix, I would have thought. The sampler, a few folks mentioned the sampler, that could actually use a bit of a revamp, and I agree. And the way that samples and files are managed in here. So if you've ever tried to import files, we'll move those files. If you've ever tried to import files here, you can only import them one by one. And that's no good, because what if you buy yourself a sample pack with like 200 drum samples and you want to bring these in to use? Well, guess what? You got to copy them in one by one. It's really a pain in the butt. Or you can copy them over to your GarageBand file transfer folder, and they'll all show up here. But there's no arrangement options. There's no folder view options. You just have to bring in the ones you want to use, and then you're kind of stuck with that. So that really does need a bit of a revamp. And the other thing is the actual sampler itself. So the sampler is very cool. Again, I sound like I'm complaining. I'm not. Everything in GarageBand is pretty cool for creating music. There's just a few things that we could probably improve upon. So we'll turn on sampling there. So when you're recording a sample, hello. I don't have a microphone plugged in to my audio interface. It's not going to do that. But when you're recording a sample or importing a sample, you can only put one sample across your whole keyboard. And what a lot of folks have said is, how good would it be if you could just have a different sample on each different key? So you want to play a drum sound, you can set up your whole drum set on your one keyboard instead of having to have 8 different keyboard tracks just for 8 different drum sounds. That would be something that would be super cool as well. I'm going to just sort of flick through some of the rest of these here, and then I'm going to check in with the folks here live, but we can cover more of this. So other things we had were MIDI, import and export for MIDI, like better MIDI settings and better MIDI control. Ability to export stems would be very cool. Mastering presets, like some better mastering. The drums we'll talk about in a minute. So improvement of some of the drum options there. Sharing options. Yep, I hear you. Multiple tempos and time signatures would be super cool as well. Brushes for the drums, ability to do some softer drums, Mac to iOS compatibility, improved visual EQ with more of an advanced mode, and a master view with longer vertical faders. Yeah, it can be really hard to mix a track sometimes when you're playing around with these horizontal faders. It's a bit unnatural. If you're used to the world of tracks with strips, then you kind of want those vertical views. So that's my really quick hot takes on what I would like to see. But as I said, importantly, there are folks here who are live that I want to chat to and find out what you need. So I'm going to check here and go back up there and take a look. So is this on iPhone or Mac? This is on the iPhone and the iPad. So this is all GarageBand iOS that we're talking about here. And we'll talk about some of the differences as we go along. I need MIDI. Yeah, so MIDI is definitely something that is required, that I think we need there. Let's see who has got one. Thank you. Hello to Dear Hands. I'm glad to have you here on board. Question here, is it possible to have multiple tempos or time signatures in one song? Not really. There's a hack. There's a workaround. I've got a video about it, which is all about how to just sort of bring 2 projects together. Like it's a hack. So the only way to do it really is to just sort of bring another project into your project that's at that different tempo or that different time signature. It's doable, but boy, is it clunky. Soulrack has some advice here for guitar. Thumb Jam have some nice guitars. I've got Thumb Jam. I bought it like a year ago, never used it. Totally need to. Yes, a good point from Tom. They won't add too many features, otherwise it would cannibalize Logic Pro sales. Yeah, a lot of this depends on, and what I'm probably talking about here is all of the stuff I'm saying is probably going to be in that Logic version that is going to be like compatible with your Silicon Macs and your iOS. So what we'll probably do is in a year's time, people come back to this video and say, oh yeah, all that stuff we said we wanted in GarageBand, well, guess what? You pay $49 and you get Logic for iOS/Mac, and then you can do all of these things on there. Blues or rock guitar? Yeah, we definitely want some more guitar sounds, don't we? Let's see. Is there anyone else that's got any link? So Patrick over at the GarageBand Guide, hello to you. Hope you're doing well. I'd rather see an amalgamation of the two with the best features of both available to Mac and iOS users. Yeah, that would be good. So at the moment, Mac definitely has more features. So I've talked about this in a recent video. I've got a Mac versus iOS GarageBand video, which you can find here on the channel. But yeah, there's definitely more features in Mac. So you've got your master track, you've got your effects automation, you've got arrangement tracks, you've got naming sections, you've got multiple time signatures and tempos. So if you want all those things, yes, a Mac is the way to go, or some of the alternatives that we'll be talking about towards the end of this video. But yeah, I agree that if they're going to create one, if they're going to amalgamate, and I just don't know, I've got this feeling that eventually there'll be some sort of amalgamation, at least in the newer version, because they'll create a new version. They've got to do an iWork suite or an iLife suite for the new Silicon, and I would imagine that they want to showcase GarageBand, iMovie, iPhoto. Is that even still a thing? They'll want to put all those in there. So I think that would be it. Benedict, yeah, more guitar sounds, master track, naming sections, verse, etc. Yeah, so I agree. I think there's definitely some scope for doing things in there. If I missed your comment, and if you've got other things that you want to add in, definitely go and throw them down in the comments after the video. And if you're watching on the replay, don't worry, you didn't miss out. I want to hear from you too. Put those in the comments of this video, because what I'm hoping is let's get a master list going on here, and then I can return and I can do like a one video that's just all of the different things that people actually want to add in or want to see in future versions of GarageBand. Alrighty, back to the list here. I did sort of allude to some of these. Excuse me. I did allude to some of these before, but let's just go through in a little more detail. So we talked about the sampler. We talked about the files. Now, stems or exporting. Now, this is one that I've did an updated, refreshed video of how to use stems recently, which was good. But it's really clunky. So it's easy to do. I was going to say it's hard to do stems. It's not hard to do. It's just clunky. It's just a pain in the butt. So in order to do stems, what you need to do is solo one track at a time. So say I wanted to create stems of this one, I'd have to come in here and grab my drums and go out here and then export that as a WAV file, come back in, solo the next one, export that as a WAV file. You get what I'm saying here? So yeah, that's really annoying. Now there is a way, I think I saw Dean Davis do a video this week, that there's a way to actually do a bulk export of stems in GarageBand Mac, but there's not a way to do it here in iOS. So that would be a good thing to be able to add. If you could just say export not as a wave, but as multiple waves. It can't actually be that hard. There's got to be a simple way for GarageBand to do that, to just say, if there's 16 tracks, just export 16 separate WAV files and you'll be fine. Oh, getting all choked up here talking about this. Presets is something that a lot of folks talked about. So if you've used GarageBand, you would know that you can do things like come in here and go to your EQ. So I can't even remember what this is probably my weird vocal that I did for this song. But you can come in here, you can add like your master effects and reverb, and then you can come in here and go into your EQ. Now, we don't have a lot of presets in here. So if we wanted to come in here and EQ this vocal, when you open your eyes up to the sky above and you feel, we can do that, but there's no preset here. So there's no like preset for like a high cut or a low cut or a high shelf or anything like that. We just have to do it all manually, which is one of the weirder things, because for a program like GarageBand that does a good job at holding your hand throughout a lot of the other stuff, it's weird that it doesn't actually have that. And the same for your compressor. There's no compression presets. There's no presets on any of the stock plugins. Now, there is in GarageBand Mac. And the other thing is that a lot of folks said is, why have we got 3 bands on our visual EQ? why don't we have 5 bands or 7 bands? The GarageBand Mac Visual EQ is much better. And someone, tell me if this was you. Sorry, I meant to take all the names down so I could give credit to all the different comments. Someone actually mentioned that it would be good to have like a turn on advanced mode. So I know that Cakewalk by BandLab, a PC DAW, has a simple mode, and then you can say turn on advanced mode if you want more features. And when you do that, it actually gives you the ability. So you could say turn on advanced mode, and then suddenly you'd get 7 bands with the ability to change your cue settings and do other things. I think that would be super duper cool. But we don't have it for now. What else do we have here? So presets. Yeah, our drums. Now, Jade Star has done a bunch of videos lately about drums and how to make better drum sounds. But the problem here is if you program in a drum track, you got your kick and your snare and your toms. You've only got one crash cymbal, one ride, and obviously your hi-hat. But if you want different sounds, so you want a China cymbal, you want a second crash cymbal, you can't really program it in here. Now, you can go in afterwards and edit it. So if you record a drum track here, so if we just like hit record and we do like a when you open your eyes up, that's all we'll do for now. But we can actually go in. So this wasn't meant to be a tips video, but I just can't help myself. But if we go in here, you'll notice that we don't just have in our edit mode those ones. We have a bunch of other kit pieces here as well that we can add in. You can add in your tambourine. You've usually got a couple of different kick drums. You've definitely got a couple of different crash cymbals. You've often got a China or a splash cymbal as well. So you can actually come in here and edit and add a bunch of different stuff so you get a really cool sound like this. When you open your eyes up. That didn't actually sound bad. I did that to just like be completely random. It's weird what you can do with drum patterns. Sometimes you're like, I'm just going to go do 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 do, and then you get a cool drum pattern. My daughters do that when they use Beat Sequencer. They go in there and they're just like creating a pattern. And you know what's cool about patterns? Sometimes they create good music. So go figure. All right, what else is on the list here? We've talked about presets. We've talked about stems. We've talked about drums. Sharing options. So sharing is good but not great. So we'll cover both. We'll cover both sharing, and then we'll cover the Mac and iOS compatibility. So to give you the down low on this, Mac can open a GarageBand iOS project, but as soon as you save it as a GarageBand Mac project, you can't send it back to iOS. It is done. You try to open it in iOS and it says, this is not supported. This has features that are not supported. So that's a pain in the butt. But what we could do is if I wanted to export this, I'd need to come in here and I can either use iCloud Drive or I can airdrop it to another iOS device or to a Mac, and then it can be opened. If I edit it on another iOS device, I can then airdrop it back again. There's also some cool sharing options here. You can go into share. You can add people if it's on iCloud, and then multiple people can actually collaborate on the one project at the same time. It's a little bit clunky, and it's a little bit weird in the way it manages things like version control. So it's a feature that was thrown in there a couple of versions ago, but it's never really been refined. And we're at the point now where in the current climate, a lot of people are doing a lot of collaboration here in GarageBand, and they're finding that there's a lot of clashes and conflicts and challenges with version control that are making things less than ideal when they're doing that. So yeah, better sharing options would definitely be good. The MIDI, the MIDI. So here's the deal with MIDI. We can import a MIDI track. So you can use your loop browser here. I don't think I have a MIDI file handy. I don't, but you can just drag it in here and it will throw all of your MIDI tracks directly into here. But the problem is this excellent drum pattern that I just recorded here, there is no way for me to get that pattern, even though it's just MIDI, it's just notes, it's just data. There's no way for me to export this data out. So say I wanted to throw this into Cubasis or Audio Pro or Xdrummer or some other drum-related or digital audio workstation app, there's no way to do that. And that kind of sucks. That makes me a little bit sad because if you create something in GarageBand, it's kind of locked there. It's stuck there forever. All of these green tracks, we can export as audio, but we can't export it as MIDI. And that seems like it would be a pretty easy function to put in there, just so that if GarageBand is supposed to be this sketch pad, if you believe what a lot of folks say, they say, I use GarageBand for my ideas and getting stuff down, and then I might move it into a different DAW that maybe has more features. Well, that's really cool, except we can't move our MIDI, so not really possible. Final things here, we've got the multiple time signatures and tempos, so you'd be aware that here in GarageBand, I'm in the wrong spot. Here in GarageBand, we only have one tempo for the whole track. We only have 3 time signatures, 4/4, 3/4, and 6/8 to choose from, and we can't actually have multiples of those. So if you want a track that has a slower part and then a faster part, you're going to be SOL, which, as you know, stands for sort of out of luck. Same with key signatures. You can only have one key signature. So being able to have multiple of those for your more complex tracks would be a cool thing, no doubt. What else we got here? Softer instruments, brushes for our drums. We have all of these drum kits. We have so many drum kits. Look how many drum kits and percussion things we have now. We've got all these acoustic kits. We've got all these electronic kits. We've got all these percussion kits. Not one of them has some brushes. So you want to do some cool jazz, some like mellow laid back sounds. I'm working on a track at the moment where I just need like basically a do, 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 like just a really gentle kick snare, but the closest I can get is like this. And I'm like, no, I need a brush. Give me some brushes, man. So no brushes for the drums. We talked about the compatibility. We've talked about EQ. And finally, mixing and mastering. So for our mixing, you're mixing a track here. We've got all of our tracks. I'll turn off that weird drum track because that's going to sound bizarre. We've got all of our tracks here and we play it back.
When you open your eyes up
and you want to do mixing,
the sky above, and you feel the world.
We've got no meters, we've got no numbers or dials or anything on here to show us where we're at. So if you want to turn your vocal down by 2 dB, okay. It's about a millimeter. Is that 2 dB? I don't know. So things like that seem like they would be easy. If you just tap on there, why can't it just pop up a little thing that says you're currently at -12, and then you do that and it goes, you're now at -14, you release and you're good? Or can we have what we have in other apps is like a vertical mixer view? That would actually be really cool. But again, as Patrick and others have very accurately and correctly pointed out, if you beef up GarageBand to the point where it's like Logic, who would buy Logic? And they want to sell Logic because it's their premium music recording product. So all I'll say to that is get us a Logic for iOS so that we can have the option to go from this. Now, would I use it? Well, I'll tell you in my conclusion. I'll tell you my views on this in the conclusion, because I think you'll be surprised by some. Well, you probably won't. If you've been around the channel, you probably won't be surprised by what I've got to say. So that is everything that I wanted to show you and talk about in relation to that. We'll jump back to the chat and see if we've got any other folks that's got any other comments. If you do have any comments, yes, kick snare. Oops, soft drummer. There you go. Soft drummer is currently on sale at the moment. All right, that's going into my notes here, Jade, to check that out. I have been recommended soft drummer for those brush sounds and those cool sounds for that in the past. Metallion says, what about the plugins available only on iPad and not on iPhone? That is a good point. That's another problem that I have. So if you've used GarageBand, iPad, and iPhone, they are very similar. There's almost no differences between the two, except the plugins. So if you've used apps, you'd realize that there's two sorts of apps. There are universal apps, and then there are iPad-only apps. So all of your iPhone apps can be used on your iPad. It just might be a screen size thing that you have to increase. So there's not really such thing as iPhone-only, but there are iPad-only apps that are only available on your iPad. Problem with that is if you create a song, like I do, I use my iPad. So if I use this song here, if I wanted to say put a guitar simulator on here, like it's a vocal, but let's just pretend that I want to put a guitar simulator on here, and I'll come in here and I'll use one of my favorite guitar simulators here, which is the Stark from Clevgrand. If I come down, where are you, Stark? So the Stark, well, that's cool, and I can dial in my tones and I can get my guitar sounding good. But the problem there is that if I then go and try and listen to that on my phone, I want to go and listen on the go and do some mixing. Guess what? Can't do it. It doesn't have the ability to do that. So I know that maybe that's a small subsection, but I don't know. I think as our phones get bigger, more people like me are doing this sort of thing where you want to be in your studio or in your like audio cave, and then you're creating your music. And then you want to take it on the go, but you want to be able to tweak it and hear the whole mix and make changes on your iPhone on the go. So, yeah, I think that's actually a pretty important one there, my friend. And I agree that hopefully we could do something good. Good one here from Tom Rochelle. Some kind of time stretching ability would certainly be good. So to be able to do time stretching, which basically means that if this audio here was too slow and I wanted to stretch it out, so if this was at 100 BPM, but my track was at 110 being able to stretch that out to fill it, being able to do those cool little magic time stretches to make your audio and your vocals sort of hit the right point. All of that would be very, very cool. Flex time, yeah, flex time and whatnot. Yeah, exactly. Bit of flex time would be good. Yeah, MIDI export would be good indeed. It would be good to get on here. And good point here from Patrick. You can send it back to iOS. You just need to select share project to iOS. I did not know that. Really? Share project to iOS. This is brilliant, Patrick. We need to work on this. Either you just need to do a video on this, or maybe we should do a. I don't think we've ever done a collaboration video. We should do one where you create a project in Mac, send it to me, or no, I'd have to send a project to you. You could tweak it in Mac and then send it back to me, and I'll open it on iOS. I had no idea of that. I thought last time I checked in, and clearly I'm not a Mac GarageBand expert. I use iOS, but last time I checked in, you couldn't do that. I didn't realize there was a share to iOS option, which is brilliant. I'm going to have to explore that in more detail. Righty dokie. I think I've covered. Yeah, I've probably missed a bunch. In fact, I think I've covered everything. I definitely haven't, and I'm definitely not saying this is a full everything that's possibly lacking or missing. But remember, and we'll talk about this in the conclusion, limitations are sometimes good. Limitations are not necessarily a bad thing. So I'm not doing this video to say how terrible is it that we don't have the ability to do all these things. I'm saying this because sometimes it's just fun to have a bit of a rant and talk about some of the things that might be missing. And I didn't even touch on optimizing performance and improvements to the performance algorithm. Ooh, it could be a thing. Excuse me a moment. Sorry, I have to get better at turning my volume down when I need a cough. So let's come in to our last couple of sections. It's been an absolute blast, and I've really enjoyed being here with you. We've got a little bit to go here. We've got my conclusion as well. But I wanted to just touch on some other DAWs because I've had my eyes opened recently. Jade Star, who's one of our wonderful moderators here on the channel, is doing a series at the moment called How to App. And she's been showing particular Auria Pro, but also a bunch of other DAWs and other music creation tools. So my biggest challenge, and put your hand up, tell me if you're in the same boat, is that I learned GarageBand and now I know how to use it. And now when I want to create music, I go to it. And I've got a feeling that it's becoming a little bit of a comfort zone kind of thing for me. So I'm thinking I need to actually at least try other things. Now, I'm not saying I need to try them because I can't do what I want to do in GarageBand. This is probably the biggest problem, is that right now I can do what I want to do in GarageBand. Like GarageBand is my home away from home. It is something that I don't ever come across something and go, wow, I would create music very differently if I had something different. I mean, the last EP that I created was entirely here in GarageBand. It was this one here. It was my Maybe EP. So there's all my tracks. They were all created in GarageBand. They were mixed and even mastered in GarageBand. So, and I'm pretty happy with how that track actually came out. Like the songs on that track, I think they sound good. Would they sound better if I used a different DAW? I don't know. The question's out there. However, what I do want to do is I think that when you're in this situation, and if you're in the same, I'm going to be taking one for the team because I'm about to kick off a new series. This has kind of been the impetus for this. I'm going to kick off a new series where I'm checking out different DAWs. So the first one that I'll be checking out is Cubasis. So Cubasis made by Steinberg. Cubasis version 3 has been released a few months ago, and it's a next step up. So a lot of the stuff we've been talking about that we can't do in GarageBand, you can do in Cubasis. Now, is that going to be, what's the verdict going to be? Am I going to be so overwhelmed and not use the new features anyway, and it's going to make my workflow slower? If that's the case, guess what? It's not something that I should be using regularly, but I won't know until I try it. Maybe the ability to have things like flex time, the ability to have better fader options, to have sends and receives and buses and master tracks, maybe that will really resonate with me. So that's what we'll be trying. Then going to check out Auria Pro on the recommendation of Jade. And then we'll move into some of the more niche areas. So we've got things like Beatmaker 3, Core Gadget, more of the electronic producer, Nano Studio. So there's a bunch that I've been recommended. So if you have recommendations and you're watching here live or on the replay, let me know in the comments. What DAWs should we check out? Because I've got a month, basically the month of August, to start exploring some of these, because then guess what? You know what September is around here? It is Songtember. And that's a month where I'll be inviting you to create, record, and release an entire song in the month of September. So hang around for that. Rightio, what's the conclusion? conclusion. The conclusion of all of this is that limitations are good, right? So the reason that I like and that I use GarageBand is not because it's limited. It's not deliberately like, oh, I love the limitations of it, but I kind of do. I love the simplicity. I love the ability that I can pick up GarageBand. If I had a song idea right now, I hit on create song, I come over here, I tap on audio recorder, and then I hit record and I'm recording it in. Or if I'm like, oh, I want to hear what that sounds like with a little bit of processing on there, I go here, I go radio ready vocals, I dial in a little bit of compression, ambience, and delay, and I start singing, and I'm good to go. Like that's how simple it is. And then I start building out my idea, and then I add in my tracks, and then I continue on from there. So I do actually love the simplicity, and I do actually love the limitations, because it creates the need to do some of these workarounds and hacks, and it just keeps me on my toes and keeps me thinking. But the other thing is, it doesn't overcomplicate things. Imagine if we did have all those things. Imagine if instead of coming in here and seeing this option, which is what's your tempo, what's your time signature, what's your key signature, these would have to be all separate menu options with tempo, multiple tempo, single tempo. What point do you want to adjust your tempo? Do you want it to ramp up or ramp down? Do you want it to be a sudden change from this tempo to that tempo? Same with time signatures, same with key signatures. It would just add a heap of complexity. So whilst all the features that we've talked about here are definitely desirable, and there's some that I think are simpler than others and some that I would use more than others, I don't think it's all 100% necessary. What do I think is going to happen from here? Well, I don't think we're going to see. The question I asked on Facebook was, what would you do if you were creating version 3.0 of GarageBand? Here's the thing, though. I don't think we're going to see version 3.0 anytime soon. I don't think it's high on Apple's priority list to create. We've seen it with GarageBand, like with the Mac version. We've seen it with the iOS version. 2.1 came out when I started this channel 5 years ago, and we're at 2.3.8. So we've got 2 and a bit version increases in that whole time. You compare that to other DAWs, they got new versions coming out every few years, like new whole release versions. So I don't think we'll probably see that. What I do think we'll see, I don't think it'll be right on iOS 14 launch. Could be wrong, but we'll probably see GarageBand 2.4. And I think it will just add in a few. So with 2.3.8, we just saw things like dark mode, and we saw like USB file support for iOS 13. They're the sort of things that I think we'll see is just tweaks that just make it compatible with the newer versions. So for iOS 14, some of the things that are coming in there might be a few little things that are added in there. Complete overhaul, I don't think so, because I think that with the introduction of the new Macs, with the Apple Silicon chips that are coming, which is their in-house chips, they're moving away from Intel, moving to their own chips, that it's in Apple's best interest to put all of their development efforts into developing for that new platform. And the beautiful part for those of us that are rocking iPhones and iPads is that everything that they develop is going to end up being cross-platform. All they need to basically build in is some sort of touchscreen interface. But you know what I've been using throughout this whole demo is my mouse and my keyboard. And it's pretty clear that Apple are pushing that direction, especially on the iPad Pro, that they're pushing down the keyboard and mouse route as well. So for all the years they've been telling us you don't need a keyboard and mouse, everything can be done on touchscreen. Now I think they'll be saying, except when it can't, in which case use a keyboard and mouse. But please use our $500 Magic keyboard and Magic touchpad, because that would be a whole lot of fun and we'd appreciate it. I want to say a big thank you. This has been a lot of fun. I love doing these sort of things. I love speculating on the future, and I love doing these sort of shows. And I do appreciate you being here as well. We've got so thanks for everyone who's been here. iOS 14 is an S year for all intents and purposes. Yeah, exactly, an S year, meaning that your iPhone, your 10, your 10s, your 11, your 11s. So yeah, will we see a heap of upgrades? Probably not. But yeah, I think that, sorry, there's so many more comments here. I apologize that I can't get to them all. Otherwise, we would literally be here for several hours. But thank you, everyone, for your contributions here. If you do get some value, if you did get some value out of this one, if you hit the like button, that just tells me that you had some fun, that it was worth me getting up here, and that you enjoyed some of the rants and liked participating. Please do join the GarageBand Users Facebook group if you haven't already. There's a great group of people over there, and thank you so much to all the folks who contributed to this. What I'll do is I'll go back and I'll find anyone that does contribute to that. I'll put a thank you. I'll put a shout out down in the description. So keep adding to that thread over on the GarageBand Users Facebook group. And then anyone that adds to that, I'll come back and put your names down below, at least your first names, so that there's no privacy issues there. But thank you everyone for being here. You can, of course, head over to studiolivetoday.com. And that's where you'll find all the ways to get in touch with me. You can join the mailing list because there's a new newsletter coming out in a few hours' time. So get on the mailing list if you haven't already. That'll update you on everything Studio Live Today related. There's the gear guide there if you're in the market for buying new gears. And you can, of course, support the channel through donations and through joining me over on Patreon. And thank you and a big shout out to all of my patrons. That is going to do it for that one. Take care of yourselves and of others. Keep creating, and I'll catch you again real soon. Take care.